This is Law of Attraction Explored. I'm Tim Grimes. If you're liking the show and getting something out of it, please share it with people who you think might be interested. The stuff we're talking about is unique, and I know that it is the kind of advice and information that a lot of people are looking for who are interested in the law of attraction, but just are unable to find. So if you think you know people who might be interested, or if you want to post this on social media, it's greatly appreciated, and it will help spread the word about this show and this wonderful information. If you'd like to contact me personally, you can visit radicalcounselor.com or email me at info@radicalcounselor.com. Enjoy the episode. So I thought we would have a little bit of a more practical, very down-to-earth episode today, and just discuss some pretty obvious stuff that is actually not that obvious when we get caught up in our day-to-day lives, when we get seemingly busy and seemingly have a bunch of stuff going on. It's very easy to lose track of the obvious. And focusing on our ideals and on what we want and on what we already have on a deep level, a spiritual level, you could say, is very helpful. And at the same time, just being aware of the obvious and reminding ourselves of the obvious is extremely helpful too. And that's such an undervalued tool. You know, I love talking about deep spiritual concepts, far out law of attraction concepts, but I also love talking to people about obvious solutions. You know, a lot of the joy of not thinking, a lot of the advice I share in there, certainly a lot of the advice that I shared in Stop Being Serious, is just about exploring and playing with and taking advantage of obvious solutions. One of the best books I've ever read about doing this is a book called Obvious Atoms. It's a business book from like over 100 years ago. And it's a book about somebody who just was really good at finding and pointing out the obvious. Wonderful book. Highly recommend reading it. And this really is a great way to just, you know, look at life. It's like, how can I apply obvious solutions to things that are bothering me? You know, Stop Being Serious, joy of not thinking. I say the obvious solution in front of our face a lot of the time when we feel like crap is simply to get physically active and hyper. It's like such an obvious solution that very few people do it. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. That means we should do it. Just because most people don't do it doesn't mean that we should not do it. We should do it, right? We should take advantage of the obvious. And this is a very profound thing to contemplate. You know, what is an obvious thing I can do today to help me feel better, to help me feel good, to help other people feel good? What is an obvious thing I can do? We don't need to get overly esoteric. We don't need to visualize or do complicated law of attraction techniques. Like, what's something freaking obvious that I can do that can make me feel better, that can bring peace into my life right now? So I'm not going to read to you from Obvious Atoms today. I thought I would read a quote from another classic book, a self-help, self-development book that's very famous, called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers. Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. The title tells you a lot about what the book is about. And there's a great excerpt I'm going to read talking about being positive and being overly positive, or Pollyannish, as people like to call it, and how it really is obvious that we should be positive, that we should be more positive. And once you get into the law of attraction, this becomes even more clear that being positive is the obvious way to go about things most of the time, if not all of the time. And even though it's obvious, we seem to have often this predisposition to get negative, to become negative and to stay negative. And we shouldn't do that. Or at least we shouldn't do that as much as we do. Right? So obvious. This is an obvious atom solution. Be positive. Stay positive. Always be positive to the best of your ability in the given circumstance. Be overly positive, quote unquote, overly positive, if such a thing exists, which perhaps it does not a lot of the time, at least. So I want to read to you this excerpt from Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers, because it's a great little nugget about how to do this and why we should do this. Susan Jeffers writes, having dinner with a friend one evening, I fervently tried to make her see the positive side of something she fervently viewed as negative. Suddenly, she disdainfully remarked, "You're beginning to sound like Pollyanna." Much to her surprise and mine, I blurted out, "What's so terrible about Pollyanna anyway? What's wrong with feeling good about life despite the obstacles in your way? What's wrong with looking at the sun instead of seeing gloom and doom? What's wrong with trying to see good in everything?" "Nothing is wrong with it," I asserted. "In fact," I added incredulously, "why would anyone resist thinking that way?" And resist we do. Positive thinking is one of the most difficult of all concepts to get across to people. When I present my ideas on positive thinking in my workshops and classes, many of my students respond immediately with, "Oh, that's not realistic." When I question them about what makes negative thinking more realistic, they cannot give me an answer. There is an automatic assumption that negative is realistic and positive is unrealistic. Upon inspection, this is pure madness. It is reported that more than 90% of what we worry about never happens. That means that our negative worries have less than a 10% chance of being correct. If this is so, isn't being positive more realistic than being negative? Think about your own life. I'll wager that most of what you worry about never happens. So are you being realistic when you worry all the time? No. If you think about it, the important issue is not which is more realistic, but rather, why be miserable when you can be happy? If being a Pollyanna creates a happier world for you and those around you, why hesitate for one more moment? Gosh, that is a good little excerpt there. Jeffers really nails it, you know. And I touch on this point a fair amount in The Joy of Not Thinking, and it's just so true what she's saying. You know, why is being negative and thinking pessimistically seen as being more realistic than being positive? That's just stupid. Again, Jeffers writes, there is an automatic assumption that negative is realistic and positive is unrealistic. Upon inspection, this is pure madness. It's madness. You know, and our negativity bias is bullshit. If we want to get quote unquote real, you know, if we want to get real and get obvious, we have to acknowledge that being positive is the way to go. If not all the time, at least most of the time. I'm not saying you can never toss some negativity in there, but the problem is that for most of us, there is this default to be negative a lot of the time. And guess what? That is being stupid. And this is something we can work on. You know, I can tell you in my own life, I used to be pretty cynical. And there's a part of me that still is rather cynical. But I had to drop a lot of my negativity and a lot of my cynicism when I began to realize the power of my thinking and the power of my emotions, and the power that outlook was giving me was not what I wanted. So I had to drop a lot of negativity. You know, and it's so easy to be negative. And guess what? It's also fucking stupid. And I know this firsthand. You know, I'm not chastising you here. I'm chastising myself. It's worthwhile to be positive. Very, very, very worthwhile. And if you believe in these law of attraction principles, if you believe that your thinking is creating your reality, at least on some level, why the heck would you not be positive most of the time? Let's be like obvious atoms. Let's find obvious solutions to things that bother us, that plague us. Negativity plagues a lot of us, and we can get rid of most of it.